He leaned across the aisle, his smile sharp enough to cut glass, and whispered, "You're nothing, Sophia. Just a footnote in my success story. By noon, you'll be bankrupt." Sophia gripped her pen until her knuckles turned white. She sat alone at the defendant's table, wearing a thrift store blazer, while Mason Thorne sat surrounded by a legion of high-priced lawyers in bespoke suits. He thought he had won. He thought he had crushed the only witness to his corruption. He treated the courtroom like his personal country club, laughing as the judge dismissed her evidence. But Mason didn't know one thing. He didn't know who was waiting outside in the pouring rain. He didn't know that the rusty sedan Sophia used to drive had been replaced. And when the double doors swung open later that afternoon, the silence that fell over Mason was worth every second of the pain. Watch until the end to see the moment arrogance met absolute power. The air in courtroom 4B smelled of floor wax and old money. It was a stifling, oppressive atmosphere designed to make ordinary people feel small, and it was working. Sophia Jenkins sat at the small wooden table on the left, her hands trembling slightly as she shuffled a stack of papers. They were disorganized, a stark contrast to the leather-bound binders neatly arranged on the opposing table. Across the aisle sat Mason Thorne, the CEO of Thorne Logistics. He looked like a man who had never been told no in his entire 45 years of life. He was wearing a navy Brioni suit that likely cost more than Sophia's entire annual salary at her new waitressing job. On his wrist, a platinum Rolex Daytona glinted under the harsh fluorescent lights, a subtle display of wealth that screamed power. "Mr. Thorne," Judge Reynolds said, looking over his spectacles. The judge was an older man with a face like crumpled parchment. Rumor had it he played golf with Mason's father at the exclusive Oakwood Country Club, a detail that made Sophia's stomach churn with anxiety. "Please continue with your statement regarding the plaintiff's conduct." Mason stood up, buttoning his jacket with a practiced, elegant motion. He didn't look at the judge immediately. Instead, he cast a pitying glance at Sophia. "Your Honor," Mason began, his voice a smooth baritone that oozed false sincerity, "it brings me no joy to be here. Sophia was a distinct employee. We tried to mentor her. We tried to help her understand the complexities of corporate logistics. But when she accuses a company as established as Thorne Logistics of embezzlement and safety violations without a shred of proof, it crosses the line from incompetence to malice." "I have proof," Sophia blurted out, standing up. "I submitted the emails, the manifest logs from the shipping containers in Newark." "Order," Judge Reynolds barked, slamming his gavel. "Ms. Jenkins, you will speak when it is your turn. Another outburst like that, and I will hold you in contempt." Sophia sank back into her chair, her face burning. "But, Your Honor, the files are in Exhibit C," she whispered, her voice cracking. Mason smiled, a tight, predatory expression that didn't reach his eyes. "Your Honor, regarding those logs," Mason continued, making air quotes with his fingers. "Our IT department has conducted a full forensic audit. Those documents were fabricated. Ms. Jenkins created them on her personal laptop 2 days after she was terminated for stealing office supplies." "That's a lie," Sophia hissed under her breath. "We have the affidavit from the head of IT, Mr. Gregerson, confirming the metadata timestamps," Mason said, sliding a crisp document toward the bench. Sophia felt tears pricking her eyes. Gregerson. Of course. Gregerson was Mason's brother-in-law. They had rigged the entire system against her. She was a single woman, barely 30, going up against a corporate titan. She had found the discrepancies in the shipping weights, illegal waste being dumped in international waters to save costs. She had tried to do the right thing, and in return Mason had fired her, blacklisted her from the industry, and was now suing her for defamation and breach of contract for $2 million. "Ms. Jenkins," the judge said, looking at her with disdain, "do you have a forensic expert to refute Mr. Thorne's claims?" "No, Your Honor," Sophia said quietly. "I can't afford an expert. I'm representing myself because no lawyer in the city would take the case against Mr. Thorne." Mason chuckled softly, a sound that carried clearly in the silent room. Perhaps, Your Honor, no lawyer took the case because they knew it was a fantasy constructed by a disgruntled former employee looking for a payout. The morning session dragged on for 2 more hours. It was a bloodbath. Every piece of evidence Sophia tried to present was objected to by Mason's lead attorney, a shark named Eleanor Vance, and sustained by the judge. They picked apart her work history, her credit score, even a parking ticket from 3 years ago, painting a picture of a chaotic, unreliable woman. When the judge called for a recess for lunch, Sophia felt hollowed out. She began gathering her scattered papers, her hands shaking so badly she dropped a folder. As she bent down to pick it up, a pair of polished Italian leather shoes stepped into her field of vision. She looked up. Mason was towering over her. The lawyers and the judge had already exited to the judge's chambers. The bailiff was by the door, distracted by his phone. "You look tired, Sophia," Mason said, his voice low and mocking. "Go to hell, Mason," she spat, grabbing her papers. He laughed. "You still don't get it, do you? This isn't a court of law. It's a theater, and I own the stage. You're going to lose this case. You're going to owe me $2 million. I'll garnish your wages for the rest of your life. You'll be serving coffee until you're 70, and every dime you make will belong to me." He leaned in closer, invading her personal space. "You should have just looked the other way regarding the Newark shipments. Curiosity didn't just kill the cat, Sophia. It bankrupted her." "The truth will come out," Sophia said, though her voice lacked conviction. "Truth is a commodity," Mason sneered, "and you can't afford it." He straightened his tie, checked his reflection in the glass partition, and walked away whistling a cheerful tune. Sophia was left alone in the empty courtroom, the weight of his threat crushing her chest. She had $40 in her bank account and a maxed-out credit card. He was right. She was nothing. The lunch recess was only an hour. Sophia didn't have money for the courthouse cafeteria, where a sandwich cost $15, so she walked out the side exit to get some fresh air. Of course it had started to rain. It wasn't a gentle drizzle. It was a cold gray downpour that soaked through her thin blazer instantly. She stood under the small concrete overhang of the loading dock, shivering, clutching her file folder to her chest to keep the papers dry. She watched the cars pull out of the VIP parking lot. She saw Mason's car, a sleek black Mercedes Maybach S-Class. The driver, a man in a uniform, held an umbrella for Mason as he stepped out of the courthouse. Mason paused, looking around until he spotted Sophia shivering by the loading dock. He said something to his driver, laughed, and then got into the back seat. As the car rolled past her, the window slid down just an inch. "Nice suit," Mason called out, his voice cutting through the rain. The car splashed a wave of dirty puddle water onto her legs as it sped off toward a high-end restaurant for lunch. Sophia looked down at her muddy shoes and felt a sob rise in her throat. She forced it down. She couldn't cry. If she cried, she accepted defeat. She checked her phone. A notification popped up, overdraft warning account ending in 4092. She closed her eyes, leaning her head against the rough concrete wall. How did it come to this? 3 months ago, she was the senior logistics analyst at Thorne Logistics. She was good at her job, brilliant actually. She had a knack for seeing patterns in numbers that others missed. That was how she found the ghost containers. Containers that were marked as empty on the manifest but weighed tons on the crane scales. Containers that were bypassing customs inspections because of bribes she traced back to Mason's personal accounts. She had gone to HR. That was her mistake. The HR director reported directly to Mason. Within 24 hours, security had escorted her out of the building. They accused her of stealing trade secrets. They wiped her laptop remotely. They threatened her landlord. Now she was living in a studio apartment the size of a closet, working double shifts at a diner called the Greasy Spoon just to keep the lights on. "Hey lady, you can't stand there," a security guard yelled from the doorway. "Staff only." I'm a defendant," Sophia stammered. "Main entrance only." The guard grunted, not caring that she was soaked. Sophia nodded and stepped out into the rain, walking around the building. Her phone buzzed again. She pulled it out, shielding it from the water. It was an unknown number. Usually she ignored these. It was usually debt collectors, but something made her answer. "Hello. Is this Sophia Jenkins?" A deep, calm voice on the other end. It sounded vaguely familiar, but she couldn't place it. "Yes. Who is this?" "My name is Arthur. I'm the chief of staff for a mutual acquaintance. You helped him a few weeks ago. Do you remember?" Sophia frowned, wiping water from her forehead. "I help a lot of people. I'm a waitress." This was on the highway. Route 9. A flat tire on a vintage Aston Martin. Sophia froze. The memory rushed back. It was 3 weeks ago. She was driving her beat-up Honda Civic before the transmission died completely home from a late shift. She saw an old, incredibly beautiful silver car pulled over on the dangerous shoulder of the highway. An older man was struggling with the jack. He looked frail, and the trucks were whizzing by at 80 miles an hour, shaking the ground. Sophia had pulled over. She had grown up with 3 brothers and a dad who fixed cars in the driveway. She knew how to change a tire. She told the man to get back in the car for safety, and she changed the tire in 10 minutes flat, grease staining her waitress uniform. The man had tried to offer her money, a thick roll of cash. She had refused. "Just pay it forward," she had told him. He had asked for her name. She gave it, hopped in her car, and drove away. She never thought about it again. "I remember," Sophia said into the phone. "Was the tire okay?" "The tire is fine, Ms. Jenkins. However, my employer, Mr. Sterling, was quite distressed to learn about your current legal situation. He has a habit of keeping tabs on Good Samaritans." Sophia stopped walking. The rain was matting her hair to her face. "Mr. Sterling, as in Elias Sterling." The name hit her like a physical blow. Elias Sterling wasn't just a rich man. He was the rich man. He owned Sterling Heavy Industries, a conglomerate that made Mason Thorne's company look like a lemonade stand. Sterling bought companies like Thorne Logistics just to strip them for parts. He was a recluse, a legend, a man who famously destroyed anyone who crossed his moral code. "The same," Arthur said. "He understands you are currently in a recess at the district court. He is nearby." I have to go back in 30 minutes, Sophia said, her heart pounding against her ribs. "I can't be late. Judge Reynolds hates me." "Mr. Sterling is aware of Judge Reynolds. He is also aware of Mason Thorne," Arthur said. The voice on the phone grew colder, sharper. "Mr. Sterling does not like bullies, Ms. Jenkins. And he certainly does not like it when the woman who saved his life on the side of a highway is treated like garbage by a man who inherited his daddy's money." What are you saying?" "I am saying," Arthur continued, "that your transportation situation seems inadequate. You are wet, you are cold, and you are being humiliated. Mr. Sterling would like to offer you a ride back to the front entrance, and perhaps a bit of assistance." Sophia looked around the desolate, rainy street. "I don't need charity." "It is not charity, Sophia. It is an investment. Look to your left." Sophia turned. Turning the corner, moving silently through the rain like a shark through dark water, was a car. But not just any car. It was a Rolls-Royce Phantom, elongated and armored, painted a midnight blue that looked black in the storm. It had diplomatic flags on the fenders. It was the kind of car that heads of state traveled in. It rolled up to the curb right next to her. The back door opened. The interior was warm, glowing with soft amber light. Sitting there, wrapped in a cashmere blanket, was the old man from the highway, Elias Sterling. He looked stronger than he had that night. His eyes were sharp, intelligent, and currently blazing with a quiet fury. "Get in, Sophia," Elias said softly. "We have 20 minutes before court resumes. That is plenty of time to change the narrative." Sophia hesitated for only a second. She looked back at the courthouse where Mason was likely sipping a $500 wine, laughing at her demise. Then she looked at the open door of the Rolls-Royce. She stepped inside. The door of the Rolls-Royce thudded shut, sealing out the noise of the rain in the city. The silence inside was instant and total, broken only by the soft hum of the climate control, which was already warming the air. Sophia sat on the edge of the cream-colored leather seat, dripping wet, afraid to ruin the upholstery. "Please," Elias said, gesturing to a towel that Arthur, sitting in the front passenger seat, had already passed back. "Do not worry about the leather. It is replaceable. Dignity is not." Sophia took the towel, burying her face in it for a moment. It smelled of lavender and expensive starch. When she lowered it, she looked at Elias. Up close, the billionaire looked even more formidable than he had on the highway. His suit was a charcoal three-piece immaculate. His eyes, pale blue, scanned her with the precision of a laser. "Why are you here, Mr. Sterling?" Sophia asked, her voice trembling slightly as the adrenaline began to wear off, replaced by bone-deep exhaustion. "I changed a tire. I didn't save your life in a war zone. You don't owe me this." Elias poured a cup of tea from a crystal decanter built into the center console and handed it to her. "Drink. It's chamomile and honey. It will stop the shaking." He waited until she took a sip before leaning back. "You are correct, Sophia. I do not owe you a ride in a Rolls-Royce for a tire change. I sent you a thank you card and a check for $50,000 2 weeks ago to your old address. I assume you never received it." Sophia's eyes widened. I was evicted. My mail hasn't been forwarded yet." "I figured as much when the check wasn't cashed," Elias said. "But that is a triviality. I am here because of him." He pointed a manicured finger toward the courthouse window visible through the rain-streaked glass. Mason Thorne." Elias said the name as if it were a disease. "Thorne Logistics handles the shipping for 3 of my subsidiary companies. Aerospace components. Highly sensitive, highly regulated materials." Sophia felt a jolt of electricity. "The Newark shipments." Elias nodded slowly. "Precisely. You found discrepancies in the weight logs. You thought they were dumping waste. That was a logical conclusion for a mid-level analyst. But you were wrong." Sophia frowned. "I saw the numbers. The containers were light coming in and heavy going out, or vice versa. The math didn't add up." "They weren't dumping waste, Sophia," Elias said, his voice dropping to a gravelly whisper. "They were stealing prototypes. Mason Thorne has been stripping my technology from his shipping containers, replacing the weight with scrap metal and selling my proprietary designs to competitors overseas. He isn't just a bad boss. He is a corporate spy." Sophia gasped. The scale of it was massive. That's treason, or at least industrial espionage on a global scale." "It is," Elias agreed. "I have been building a case against him for 6 months. My team has been watching him, and then you stumbled into the middle of it." "And he crushed me for it," Sophia whispered. "He panicked," Elias corrected. "He destroyed your career because he was terrified you'd pull the loose thread that would unravel his entire empire. He thinks he buried you. He thinks that by suing you he can silence you and discredit you forever." Elias reached into a leather satchel next to him and pulled out a thick black folder. He placed it on the seat between them. "This," Elias said, tapping the folder, "contains the real forensic audit of the Newark server, not the one his brother-in-law cooked up. This has the IP addresses, the real timestamps, and the wire transfers linking Mason to the offshore accounts where the stolen money went." Sophia stared at the folder. It was the Holy Grail. It was her life back. "You're giving this to me." "I am giving you the weapon," Elias said. "But you have to be the one to swing the sword. This is your lawsuit. It's your name on the docket." "But I can't present this," Sophia said, panic rising again. "Judge Reynolds hates me. He sustained every objection Mason's lawyer made. He won't even let me enter new evidence. He'll say it wasn't submitted during discovery." Elias smiled a dry, thin smile. "Reynolds is a problem, yes. He is worried about his re-election campaign. He needs donors. Mason is a donor. But do you know who Reynolds is afraid of? Sophia shook her head. Me, Elias said simply. And he is afraid of the man sitting in the front seat next to Arthur. Sophia looked forward. She hadn't noticed the fourth person in the car. The partition window slid down. A man with silver hair wearing glasses that looked like they cost more than a car turned around. "Hello, Ms. Jenkins," the man said. His voice was smooth like velvet wrapped around a brick. "My name is James Blackwood." Sophia stopped breathing. James Blackwood was the most famous litigator in the country. He was known as the Reaper. He didn't lose cases, he annihilated the opposition. He charged $2,000 an hour, and you had to wait 6 months to get on his calendar. You're going to represent me. Mr. Sterling has retained my services on your behalf, Blackwood said. I've already filed an emergency motion of appearance electronically. The clerk just stamped it 3 minutes ago. When you walk back into that courtroom, you won't be pro se anymore. Sophia looked from Blackwood to Elias. The tears finally spilled over, but they weren't sad tears. They were tears of overwhelming relief. Why? She asked again. You could have just sued him yourself. Elias looked at her with a softness that surprised her. You stopped on a dangerous highway for an old man when 1,000 other cars drove by. You have character, Sophia. Mason Thorne has none. I have billions of dollars, but I cannot buy what you have. I want to see you win. I want to see the look on his face when he realizes he picked a fight with the wrong waitress. Elias checked his pocket watch. It is 12:55 p.m. Court resumes in 5 minutes. He looked at her soaking wet blazer. Arthur. Already done, sir, Arthur said. He handed back a garment bag. We picked this up from the boutique on the way. It's a standard size 4. It should fit. Sophia unzipped the bag. Inside was a crisp white power suit. Sharp lines, high collar, impeccable tailoring. It looked like armor. Put it on, Elias said, turning his head to look out the window while Arthur raised the privacy divider. The rain has stopped. It's time for you to make an entrance. Outside the courthouse, the rain had indeed stopped, leaving the pavement glistening black. The clouds were breaking, allowing shafts of sunlight to pierce through, spotlighting the grand stone steps of the district court. Mason Thorne was standing near the bottom of the steps finishing a cigarette. He was surrounded by his entourage, Eleanor Vance, his lawyer Gregerson, his IT guy, and 2 junior associates who carried his briefcases. Mason was laughing. Did you see her face when I mentioned the wage garnishment? Mason chuckled, taking a drag. She looked like she was going to vomit. It was brutal, Mason, Eleanor said, checking her phone. Reynolds is eating out of your hand. We'll have a summary judgment by 3:00 p.m. You'll be home in time for dinner. I'm thinking of countersuing for emotional distress, Mason joked. Just to really twist the knife. She wasted my time. Time is money. She's broken, Gregerson added. I saw her walking around the back of the building in the rain earlier. She looked like a drowned rat. She probably won't even show up for the afternoon session. She'll default. If she defaults, I win automatically. Mason grinned. Perfect. A hush fell over the crowd of reporters and lawyers milling about the entrance. The ambient noise of the city seemed to dip. What is that? Eleanor asked, looking toward the street. Mason turned. Coming down the center of the street, ignoring the traffic lanes, was the Rolls-Royce. It moved with a heavy, majestic grace. The sunlight caught the Spirit of Ecstasy hood ornament, making it gleam like a star. It wasn't just a car, it was a statement. The diplomatic flag snapped in the wind. The sheer size of the vehicle made the nearby taxis look like toys. Is that Elias Sterling's car? Gregerson asked, his voice dropping. Everyone in the business world knew the car. It was more famous than the mayor's limo. What is Sterling doing here? Mason frowned. A flicker of unease went through him. He had been skimming from Sterling's contracts, but he was sure he hadn't been caught. Sterling never came to district court. Sterling didn't do state court. The Rolls-Royce pulled up right to the curb directly in front of Mason. It blocked his path to the stairs. The driver's door opened. A uniformed chauffeur stepped out, walked around the back, and opened the rear passenger door. Mason watched, mesmerized. He expected Elias to step out. He prepared his best sycophantic smile, ready to greet the billionaire and perhaps invite him to dinner. But Elias didn't step out. First, a sleek black stiletto heel hit the pavement. Then a leg in tailored white trousers. Then Sophia Jenkins stood up. She wasn't the shivering, wet, defeated woman Mason had seen an hour ago. She was wearing a white suit that glowed in the afternoon sun, cut to perfection. Her hair, previously matted with rain, was pulled back into a severe, elegant bun, courtesy of a brush and clips Arthur had provided. She looked tall. She looked rich. She looked dangerous. The silence that hit the group was absolute. Mason's cigarette burned down to the filter, scorching his fingers, but he didn't feel it. His mouth hung slightly open. Sophia stood by the open door of the Rolls-Royce. She adjusted her cuffs, looking at the courthouse steps. Then she slowly turned her head and locked eyes with Mason. She didn't smile. She didn't frown. She looked at him with the cold, dispassionate gaze of an executioner looking at a condemned man. From the other side of the car, James Blackwood stepped out. He was carrying the black folder. He walked around the car and stood next to Sophia. "Blackwood," Eleanor Vance whispered, the color draining from her face. "Oh my God, she has James Blackwood." Mason felt a cold sweat break out on the back of his neck. "That's impossible," he muttered. "She has $40 in her bank account. I checked." Sophia took a step toward Mason. She stopped just 2 feet away from him. The smell of expensive perfume and ozone wafted off her. "Hello, Mason," she said. Her voice was steady, amplified by the sudden silence of the crowd. "Sophia," Mason croaked. "Whoa! Whose car is this?" "My ride," she said simply. She leaned in, mirroring the way he had leaned into her earlier that day. "You were right about one thing. This is a theater, and the lead actor just arrived." She brushed past him, her white suit brushing against his navy sleeve. James Blackwood followed her, stopping only briefly to nod at Eleanor Vance. "Eleanor," Blackwood said cordially, "I hope you brought your blood pressure medication. It's going to be a long afternoon." They walked up the stairs, the doors swinging open for them. Mason stood on the sidewalk, the Rolls-Royce idling behind him. The tinted window rolled down just enough for Mason to see a pair of pale blue eyes staring at him from the shadows of the back seat. Elias Sterling raised a glass of tea and a mock toast, his expression grim. Then the window rolled up. "Mr. Thorne," Gregerson asked, his voice shaking. "What do we do?" Mason swallowed hard. The confidence was gone. The arrogance had evaporated, replaced by a primal fear. He knew in that instant that the game had changed. "We go inside," Mason whispered, "and we pray." Courtroom 4B was different this time. When Sophia walked in flanking James Blackwood, the energy in the room shifted. The bailiff straightened his tie. The court reporter sat up straighter. Even the air conditioning seemed to hum with anticipation. Sophia took her seat at the defendant's table. Blackwood sat beside her, placing the black folder in the center of the table. He didn't open his briefcase. He didn't shuffle papers. He just sat there, hands folded, waiting. Mason and his team scrambled in a moment later. They looked disheveled, their frantic whispers echoing in the room. Eleanor Vance was furiously typing on her phone, likely trying to find out how Sophia had retained Blackwood. "All rise," the bailiff called out. Judge Reynolds entered. He looked bored, ready to wrap this up. He sat down and adjusted his glasses. "All right," Reynolds said. "We are back on the record in Thorne Logistics v. Jenkins. Ms. Jenkins, before the break you were failing to provide a witness list. Do you have anything to add before we move to closing arguments?" Judge Reynolds hadn't looked at the defendant's table yet. "Your Honor," a deep voice boomed. Judge Reynolds froze. He knew that voice. Every judge in the state knew that voice. He looked down. James Blackwood stood up. He was a tall man, and in the courtroom he seemed to absorb all the light. "James, Mr. Blackwood," Judge Reynolds stammered. I wasn't aware you were on this case." "I filed my appearance at 12:58 p.m., Your Honor," Blackwood said smoothly. "I am representing Ms. Jenkins henceforth." Reynolds looked at Mason, then back at Blackwood. He licked his lips. "I see. Well, welcome. However, Mr. Blackwood, we are quite far along. Discovery is closed." "Actually, Your Honor," Blackwood said, walking toward the bench, "we are moving to reopen discovery based on newly acquired evidence that points to gross perjury and criminal fraud committed by the plaintiff during this morning's session." "Objection!" Eleanor Vance shouted, standing up. "This is an ambush. You can't just walk in here and—" "I can," Blackwood interrupted, his voice like a whip crack, "when the plaintiff has presented forged documents to this court." The room went silent. "Forged?" Reynolds asked. "That is a serious accusation." "It is," Blackwood said. "This morning Mr. Thorne submitted an IT audit stamped by Mr. Gregerson. We have a counter-audit." Blackwood lifted the black folder. "This audit," Blackwood continued, "was conducted by the internal security team of Sterling Heavy Industries." The name dropped like a bomb. Sterling. Mason sank low in his chair. He gripped the armrest so hard the leather creaked. "Sterling Industries?" Judge Reynolds asked, his eyes widening. "Why would they be involved?" "Because—" Sophia spoke up. She stood, her voice clear and strong. "Because the cargo I was accused of lying about belonged to them. And the waste I accused Mr. Thorne of dumping wasn't waste. It was stolen property." "Objection!" Eleanor screamed. "She's testifying." "She is answering the judge's question," Blackwood countered calmly. "Your Honor, I have here the IP logs. They show that the emails from Ms. Jenkins were created on a laptop with a MAC address registered to Mr. Gregerson's home network." He handed a paper to the bailiff. "I also have the bank records," Blackwood said, his voice dropping to a dangerous register, "showing a transfer of $200,000 from a shell company in the Cayman Islands to an account held by— well, it appears to be a frantic attempt to hide it. But the routing number leads to a trust in your name, Mr. Thorne." Mason jumped up. "That's a lie. You hacked my bank." "Sit down, Mr. Thorne," Judge Reynolds barked. The judge was sweating now. If Sterling was involved, if this was real fraud, Reynolds could be disbarred for facilitating it. He had to distance himself immediately. "Mr. Blackwood," Reynolds said, his tone completely different. Respectful. Fearful. "May I see this evidence?" "Certainly." Blackwood handed up the thick file. The judge opened it. He flipped through the pages. The silence stretched for a minute, 2 minutes. The only sound was the turning of pages and Mason Thorne's heavy breathing. Reynolds looked up. His face was pale. "Ms. Vance," the judge said, looking at Mason's lawyer, "have you seen this?" "No, Your Honor, Look at it." Reynolds shoved the file toward her. Eleanor Vance looked at the first 3 pages. She saw the undeniable proof of the forged timestamps. She saw the wire transfers. She closed the folder and physically moved a step away from Mason. "Your Honor," Eleanor said, her voice shaking, I need to request a recess to consult with my client regarding criminal exposure. I was not made aware of these documents." "You're firing me," Mason hissed at her. "I'm not going to jail for you, Mason," she whispered back harshly. "There will be no recess," Judge Reynolds said, sensing the blood in the water. "Mr. Thorne, stand up." Mason stood, his legs wobbly. "This court takes a very dim view of perjury," Reynolds said, trying to salvage his own reputation by being tough, "and forgery, and utilizing the justice system to harass a whistleblower." It's a misunderstanding," Mason stammered. "Sophia is lying. She's nobody. She is the plaintiff in the countersuit I am filing right now." Blackwood said. For wrongful termination, defamation, malicious prosecution, and emotional distress. We are seeking damages in the amount of $20 million. $20 million, Mason shrieked. That's all my liquid assets. Then I suggest you start liquidating your illiquid ones, Sophia said. She turned to face him. The white suit shone under the court lights. You told me I was nothing, Sophia said. You told me I'd be a footnote, but you forgot the most important rule of logistics, Mason. What? Mason whispered, defeated. Always check who is backing the shipment, she said. Judge Reynolds slammed the gavel. I am dismissing the plaintiff's case with prejudice. I am referring the evidence of forgery to the district attorney's office immediately. Bailiff, please ensure Mr. Thorne does not leave the building until the officers arrive. We will schedule a hearing for damages on Ms. Jenkins' countersuit for Monday. Monday, Mason gasped. Monday, Reynolds said. Court adjourned. As the gavel banged, two police officers who had been standing at the back, likely called by Blackwood's team earlier, moved toward Mason. Sophia gathered her things. She didn't look back at Mason as the police read him his rights. She walked out of the courtroom, her head high. The double doors of the courthouse swung open, but this time the world looked different. When Sophia had entered that morning, the sky was gray and she was invisible. Now the late afternoon sun was blazing and the plaza was a chaotic sea of flashing cameras and shouting reporters. News of James Blackwood's appearance and the sudden arrival of Elias Sterling's Rolls-Royce had leaked. In the age of social media, the presence of two titans of industry at a minor district court hearing was enough to set the internet on fire. Sophia stepped out the white suit, acting as a beacon. Blackwood stood to her right, a silent sentinel. To her left, Arthur the chauffeur was already clearing a path through the press. Ms. Jenkins, is it true you're countersuing for $20 million? Mr. Blackwood, represent the whistleblower. What is the connection to Elias Sterling? The questions flew like arrows. Sophia felt a moment of vertigo. The flashbulbs were blinding. She felt a hand on her elbow, gentle but firm. It was Arthur. Keep walking, Ms. Jenkins. Eyes forward. Do not engage, Arthur murmured. Just as they reached the bottom of the steps, a commotion erupted behind them. The side doors of the courthouse, the ones reserved for defendants in custody, burst open. Two police officers were escorting Mason Thorne toward a waiting squad car. He wasn't in handcuffs yet, but his jacket was draped over his hands in that telltale way. He looked shattered. His hair was disheveled, his tie loosened. The arrogance that had defined him for years had been stripped away, leaving a terrified small man. It's a mistake, Mason was shouting at a reporter who shoved a microphone in his face. This is a corporate misunderstanding. I am the victim here. Then he saw Sophia. He stopped dead, causing the officer behind him to bump into him. Mason stared at her across the divide of the crowd. For a second the noise seemed to fade. He looked at the woman he had tormented, the woman he had taunted about being a waitress, the woman he had tried to crush for sport. Sophia! He screamed, his voice cracking. Sophia, tell them we can work this out. I'll give you your job back. I'll double your salary. Just tell Blackwood to drop the fraud charges. Sophia stopped. She turned slowly. The cameras swung between them, capturing the moment live. I don't want my job back, Mason, she said, her voice calm but carrying over the crowd. And I don't want your money. I want justice. And it looks like it just arrived. The officer pushed Mason's head down and shoved him into the back of the police cruiser. As the door slammed shut, the finality of it echoed in the plaza. But the drama wasn't over. As Sophia reached the Rolls-Royce, a man broke through the line of security. It was Gregerson, the IT director and Mason's brother-in-law. He was sweating profusely, his face pale and blotchy. Sophia, wait. Gregerson panted, clutching a briefcase. Arthur stepped in front of Sophia, blocking the man with his body. Back away, Arthur warned. Please, Gregerson begged, looking around wildly. I have the original hard drives. The ones Mason told me to wipe. I didn't wipe them. I kept a copy. I can give them to you. Just, please don't let them indict me. I have kids, Sophia. You know my kids. You came to the company picnic. Sophia looked at Gregerson. She remembered the picnic. She remembered playing tag with his twin daughters while he and Mason drank scotch and laughed at the interns. She remembered how Gregerson had looked her in the eye this morning and lied to the judge about the metadata. You should have thought about your kids when you forged that affidavit, Mr. Gregerson, Sophia said coldly. Give the hard drives to the district attorney. Maybe they'll cut you a deal, but don't ask me for mercy. I'm fresh out. She turned and slid into the back seat of the Rolls-Royce. The heavy door thudded shut, sealing her back into the sanctuary of leather and silence. Elias Sterling was waiting. He had watched the entire scene from behind the tinted glass. Well done, Elias said. He handed her a fresh cup of tea. You handled the press better than most senators. Sophia let out a long breath, slumping slightly into the seat. The adrenaline was crashing. I felt like I was going to throw up. That is normal, Elias said. Power is nauseating until you get used to it. The car glided away from the curb, leaving the chaos behind. Sophia sipped the tea, her hands shaking again. Why? She asked quietly. I know you said you hate bullies, and I know he was stealing from you. But the look on your face when you saw Mason, it was personal. It was more than just business. Elias looked out the window at the passing city skyline. The silence stretched for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice sounded older than his 70 years. 30 years ago, Elias began. I had a partner. His name was Jason Thorne, Mason's father. Sophia's eyes widened. I didn't know you worked together. We built the foundation of the logistics network together, Elias said. Jason was brilliant, but he was weak. He had a gambling problem. He got into debt with some very bad people. To pay them off, he started cutting corners on safety maintenance for our shipping fleet. Elias turned to look at Sophia. There was an accident. A cargo plane went down over the Atlantic. 3 pilots died. One of them was my younger brother, Thomas. Sophia gasped. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. Jason covered it up. Elias continued, his voice hard as iron. He paid off the inspectors. He destroyed the maintenance logs. He blamed it on pilot error. He blamed my brother for his own death to save his own skin. Elias clenched his fist, the leather of his gloves creaking. I couldn't prove it. Not then. Jason took his half of the company, rebranded it as Thorne Logistics, and raised his son Mason to be just like him. Arrogant, careless, believing that money can wash away blood. He looked at Sophia, his eyes burning with a cold fire. When Jason died 5 years ago, I promised his grave that I would dismantle his legacy. I promised that I would wait until Mason made a mistake big enough to destroy everything they built. And then I found the ghost containers, Sophia whispered. You found the mistake. Elias nodded. You were the key, Sophia. You were the only person honest enough to speak up and brave enough to take the beating they gave you. That is why I helped you, not just for the tire, but because you gave me the one thing I couldn't buy. What's that? Closure, Elias said. The car turned onto a private road leading up to a massive estate outside the city. Where are we going? Sophia asked. To the war room, Elias said, a faint smile returning to his lips. Mason is in jail. His stock is currently in free fall. By tomorrow morning, Thorne Logistics will be trading for pennies. I intend to buy it. You're going to buy the company. No, Elias corrected her. I am going to buy the debt. You are going to run the company. Sophia choked on her tea. What? You heard me. You know the operations better than anyone. You know where the bodies are buried because you found them. I'm too old to run another logistics firm. I need a CEO who values integrity over profit. I'm a waitress, Sophia stammered. I was an analyst. I can't be a CEO. Elias leaned forward. Sophia, you just took down a billionaire in open court. You survived public humiliation and came back swinging. You have more spine than any executive in this city. We will hire you a team. We will get you coaches. But the chair is yours. He extended a hand. So, Sophia Jenkins, are you ready to stop serving tables and start owning the restaurant? 3 weeks later, the boardroom of Thorn Logistics was a masterpiece of intimidation. A 40-foot table made of mahogany floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the skyline and portraits of Jason and Mason Thorn staring down from the walls. Around the table sat the board of directors. 12 men and women who had enabled Mason for years. They were nervous. The stock had plummeted 80% following Mason's arrest and the subsequent FBI raid. The company was bleeding cash. They had been summoned for an emergency meeting by the new majority shareholder. The double doors opened. Sophia Jenkins walked in. She wasn't wearing white this time. She wore a deep navy suit, sharp and authoritative. Her hair was down, cascading over her shoulders. She didn't look like a victim. She looked like the boss. Behind her walked James Blackwood, now acting as general counsel, and a team of forensic accountants. Sophia walked to the head of the table, Mason's old seat. She didn't sit down immediately. She stood there, placing her hands flat on the polished wood, looking at each board member in turn. "Good morning," she said. Her voice didn't waver. "Ms. Jenkins," spoke up Charles Vane, the oldest board member. He was a bloated man who had dismissed her complaints years ago. "This is highly irregular. We were told Mr. Sterling would be here." "Mr. Sterling is a silent partner," Sophia said. "I am the executive chairwoman and interim CEO." A murmur of dissent went around the table. "This is ridiculous," scoffed a woman named Linda, the VP of Operations. "You were a junior analyst. You were fired for cause. You have no experience running a multinational corporation. We are in a crisis. We need leadership, not a charity case." Sophia smiled. It was the smile of someone who held all the cards. "Fired for cause," Sophia repeated. "You mean the cause that is currently facing 20 years in federal prison for wire fraud? The cause that you, Linda, signed off on?" Linda went pale. I was following orders." "And that's the problem," Sophia said, walking slowly around the table. "You all followed orders. You watched Mason strip this company for parts. You watched him compromise safety. You watched him fire good people. And you did nothing because your bonuses kept clearing." She stopped behind Charles Vane's chair. "Here is the reality," Sophia said, dropping a thick document on the table. "This is a restructuring plan. Effective immediately, the executive bonus pool is frozen. Those funds are being redirected to pay the legal fines and to rehire the 400 workers Mason laid off last year." "You can't do that," Vane sputtered. Your contracts contain a moral turpitude clause." Blackwood spoke up from the corner, his voice like dry ice. "Given that this board approved financial statements that are now being investigated by the SEC, we have grounds to void your severance packages entirely. Unless, of course, you'd prefer to resign voluntarily today." The room went dead silent. "Furthermore," Sophia continued, walking back to the head of the table, "we are rebranding. The name Thorn is poison. From today on, this company is Phoenix Logistics. We are going to be transparent. We are going to be safe. And we are going to be honest." She looked at Linda. "Linda, you said I have no experience. Let me tell you what waitressing teaches you. It teaches you to manage chaos. It teaches you that if the kitchen is dirty, the food is poison. It teaches you that every customer watches you. I know this company's data better than anyone in this room. I know that Route 4 is inefficient. I know that the Singapore hub is skimming 3% off the top. I know that you, Linda, haven't visited a distribution center in 4 years." Sophia leaned forward, her eyes locking with Linda's. "I'm going to visit every single center in the next month. Anyone who wants to help me rebuild this place is welcome to stay. Anyone who wants to protect Mason's legacy can pack their box right now." She sat down in the big leather chair. It felt huge, but it felt right. Now, Sophia said, opening her folder. Item number 1. We need to discuss the new safety protocols for the Atlantic Fleet. One by one, the board members opened their folders. No one resigned. No one argued. They saw the fire in her eyes, and for the first time in years, they saw a leader. 12 months later. The restaurant was one of the most exclusive in the city. It was the kind of place Mason Thorne used to frequent, gold leaf ceilings, waiters in tuxedos, a 6-month waiting list. Sophia sat at the best table in the house by the window overlooking the river. She was wearing a stunning emerald green evening gown. Across from her sat Elias Sterling. He looked frailer than before, but his eyes were still bright. "To a good year," Elias said, raising a glass of champagne. "To the best year," Sophia smiled, clinking her glass against his. Phoenix Logistics was thriving. The stock price hadn't just recovered, it had doubled. Sophia had been featured on the cover of Forbes under the headline, "The Waitress Who Cleaned Up Corporate America." "I have something for you," Elias said. He slid a small velvet box across the table. Sophia opened it. It wasn't jewelry, it was a key. An old iron key. "What is this?" "The key to my office in London," Elias said. "I'm retiring, Sophia, for real this time. I'm moving to a vineyard in Tuscany. I want you to take over the Sterling Foundation. You have the heart for it." Sophia felt tears prick her eyes. "Elias, I can't thank you enough." "You already have," he said. As they finished their meal, Sophia excused herself to go to the restroom. As she walked through the opulent dining room, she passed the open kitchen. The smell of truffle oil and searing steak filled the air. She glanced into the kitchen. It was chaotic, loud, and hot. And there, near the back, scrubbing a massive grease-encrusted pot, was a man. He looked older. His hair was graying and thinning. He was sweating, his face smeared with grime. He wore a stained white apron that was too big for him. It was Mason. He had been released on bail pending his appeal, but his assets were frozen. He was bankrupt. He was unhireable in any office. He was doing the only work he could find to pay his legal fees. Mason looked up as Sophia passed. Their eyes met through the pass-through window. For a moment, time stopped. Sophia remembered the rain. She remembered him laughing at her from his Maybach. She remembered him calling her nothing. Mason froze, clutching the scouring pad. He looked at her emerald gown, her diamonds, the way the staff moved out of her way with respect. Shame, hot and red, flooded his face. He looked down, turning back to the dirty pot, scrubbing furiously to hide his face. Sophia didn't stop. She didn't gloat. She didn't say a word. She simply kept walking. He wasn't worth her energy anymore. He was just a ghost in the background of her life. She walked out of the restaurant into the cool night air. The Rolls-Royce was waiting. Arthur held the door open. "Home, Ms. Jenkins?" Arthur asked. Sophia looked up at the stars. She thought about the $40 in her bank account a year ago. She thought about the long nights studying spreadsheets. She thought about the justice she had carved out of a broken system. "Yes, Arthur," she said, stepping into the car. "Let's go home." And that is how the tables turned. Mason thought he could crush Sophia because she was just a waitress. He thought money made him untouchable. But he forgot that true power doesn't come from a bank account. It comes from integrity, resilience, and the courage to stand up when everyone else tells you to sit down. Sophia didn't just win a lawsuit. She reclaimed her dignity and built an empire from the ashes of his corruption. What would you have done in Sophia's shoes? Would you have taken the money, or would you have fought for justice? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story of karma and triumph, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel. And don't forget to subscribe and ring the notification bell so you never miss a story. We release new dramas every week. Thanks for watching, and remember, never underestimate the underdog.